around. Okay, good. We're going for it. All right. And we're going to open our prayer with gratitude that we have figured this out, and it is now Chris is on board.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the month of October. Due to the Earth's tilt away from the sun, in this month, we begin losing minutes of daylight. In fact, by mid-October, we'll be down to about 11 and a half hours of daylight. That's down over an hour and a half from mid-August. And by the end of the month, the sunset will be just a bit after 6:30. If you are someone who loves the light of the sun, which brightens the days with warmth, lifts us up after days of clouds and rain, this might be more of a challenging time for you. We have a dear friend in Wisconsin who bought a light therapy box to use during the winter to help keep seasonal affective disorder at bay, and found it to be helpful. In our homes and at church, we almost take for granted the lighting of the spaces we meet in. We are grateful for what is already in place as we envision the future together. So, in this month of October, as we are culminating our work towards making our final recommendations, we pray first to remember our purpose initially, to be able to fully use technology in ways that enhance all our faith journeys. God gives us an inner light. The book of Isaiah, chapter 60, says, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." Psalm 27 declares, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" We recall the familiar verses from Matthew chapter 5 that read, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden." Lord, as we discuss and identify those AV technology enhancements, we continue to pray for your guidance. We pray for your light to shine on our paths ahead. We pray that our own lights will shine by giving our best efforts. We pray and put our trust in you, as we know that thy word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our paths. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I have to say, working with each of you on the AV task force has turned to be an honor and a delight, but I have to give extra credit for the opening prayers each time that we meet. The two of you put an extraordinary effort into it and truly start us off in the right direction. And each one of them is a keeper. So no, you're gonna hand that to me.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you are, because everybody likes their addition. And I'd like you to know, she not only has it here, she has a little sunrise or sunset. I'm not sure, but the light is shining. So thank you very much, Chris. Thank you. All right, so a lot of project progress is being done. And I just want to know how many people noted that the draft is 13 pages long. All right, I just am checking to see if anybody wonders. There's a lot of action going on. This page is chock full. It's chock full. So, all right, so I jumped ahead there. I first want Ernie, if you could come off of mute and just share, give us a little insight into the status, proposal, thought behind what's going to happen to the $39,000 fellowship hall proposal. So if you could just bring us up to date on that, and we appreciate you sharing that with us.
So as you all may recall, some weeks ago, we had brought Van Production Services in to give a quote for providing an upgrade to Fellowship Hall. Them coming in to start that process is what led them to becoming engaged in helping us to square away the audio and video issues in the sanctuary. So they have now delivered that first proposal. Michael's working with an additional vendor and is expecting a second proposal in the next week or so. There's not reason to spend a bunch of time on this proposal today, other than to note that in their attempt to, meet our requirements, it doesn't look exactly like what we were considering and drafting up in these recommendations. As opposed to ceiling speakers, they're recommending, it sounds more like a theater style setup where you've got big speakers up front and then some wall mounted speakers along the side, as you go back through Fellowship Hall, as opposed to a movable video screen and a projector. They're recommending a pair of large TVs to be mounted on the walls on either side of the front stage. They're also proposing something that we hadn't even been, considering in here, is around the TV networking, so that we can have flexibility to display either a computer-based, PowerPoint kind of presentation, or a live video that could either be on the TV in the narthex, or the TV in the conference room, or the TVs in Fellowship Hall, or the TV in Ogram Hall. So all those things are bundled in here, and we're expecting a second proposal coming in so we can compare and contrast those. And then this gives us something that we can go from our, preliminary heads up to the foundation group saying, here may be an opportunity for how you could, fund a grant for a significant upgrade in the church. And with the two proposals, we can then fine tune that and decide what we want to do about going forward with, pursuing the conversation with the foundation folks. Any questions or comments on any of that?
Ernie, I have one. Have they ever taken into consideration a large screen in Fellowship Hall for viewing of a movie or something like that you could change it into that type of a venue?
So,
Yeah,
can I jump into that?
Jane, thank you for muting. Ernie, thank you for muting. Michael would like to make a comment.
Yeah, the van worked with a second party acoustical engineer and a second party screen type person in building the quote. Their recommendation for everyday purposes, including presentations, possible worship services, etc., for Fellowship Hall, was two very, very, very large televisions mounted on either side. They didn't see great possibilities for roll down screens in Fellowship Hall, again, because of the nature of the architecture. But to Jane's point, we do have a large screen that the church already owns that can be installed in there for movie screening events like the one coming up in October. So I just wanted to throw that in.
You're okay, Jane? All right. Okay, other comments on, we're getting two proposals.
Glad about that.
Okay, so Chris is glad we're getting two proposals. And the idea would be that then that would be an example of what could go forth to the foundation for capital investment.
So that's, I have a question to Ernie, I guess. Talk to us about process. Do you see the AV task force making a recommendation and making a submission to the foundation board, or do you see the council doing that? Somebody's got to submit an application to the foundation if we want to get some money. Who do you see doing that?
So I think it's very important that it be clear that this recommendation comes from the task force, but because the task force is supposed to be, coming to an end shortly, I would hate to say, the task force has to be the one to see this through and, handle the grant request through to completion. So I would recommend that this be part of, the set of recommendations that the task force brings to the council and ask the council to then pursue it from there. I'm certainly not committed to that approach, but that's how I've been thinking about it. What do you all think?
That's,
So, Mike, you got
yeah, I just want to kind of mirror what Ernie was saying. I kind of think that's the direction it needs to come from. It needs to come from the council. I mean, I don't think, I don't have a problem with it coming directly from the AV task force, but to me, our recommendations go to the council and then council asks the foundation, just the mechanics of it.
So it could be mentioned overall, but then separately, and here's something we recommend. Yeah, we have no authority. That is not our job. That would be the council's. All right. Now, I do have a question on timing, because with the two proposals, I'm not sure that I saw how long their pricing would be in place. So I want us just to be sensitive to that. October 24th or 6th is going to be here before we know it. But I want to just make sure if they gave the church a window that this only lasts so long that we can deal with that. Okay. So, generally, there's no objection to this being a recommendation here's two proposals. Or that we have recommend that the council send forth to the foundation. I don't think we should send two proposals forth. I'm gonna go back over there. The council doesn't want to have to go through and discern. So it would seem to me that after the two proposals come in, if staff would determine which one would be the best one, and then it can become, we meet again on the 9th. All right, so then we could say we're going to send this one forth. Is that okay with everybody? Ernie?
So my thought is that, we wouldn't even want to burden the foundation with any specific proposal. We'd make it more general than that, and, not say it's going to be X dollars and X cents. It's just going to be, here's a round number that we expect will cover the proposal, and until we finish totally negotiating the proposal, who knows what the final dollars and cents are going to be. So in this example, I'd just say, yeah, the request would be for $40,000, and if we end up going over, then the church is going to have to find a way to come up with the extra. If we come in under, then great, we come in under. But I wouldn't be handing, the foundation a proposal and say, here, look at the nits and gnats of this and decide if you want to fund it. It would be more general than that.
Narrative in such a way that it can go forward. Are we okay with that? Everybody's okay with that? All right. Well, let's go to the 13-page bounteous package of information. All right, so by now everyone will have had a chance to read it. You might have read it from two angles. One, high level, oh, I've never seen this before, and does it make sense to me? And then you might have read it from a proofreading standpoint, and you found a few places you would like a comma added. So if on the latter, you have any input in terms of proofreading, I ask that you send that right over to Steve directly, and we don't spend task force time with that. Rather, let's spend time on the, I've never heard of this before, and it made sense to me or it didn't perspective. So again, I appreciate the hard work that has been put in, but let's look at this from a high level, I've never seen this before angle. So do we have comments on that?
Steve,
Because Steve
Say a
can
couple.
definitely talk.
There are a couple things I want you all to know, in where I plead for your participation. On page 2, I tried to put together what we have learned. And it's really important that you agree with the analysis I created based on the numbers that we all looked at or the discussions we had. I had a good email conversation with Sandy Bodnick last evening about this. For example, there is one of these that talks about the fact that there is a 50-50 perspective on whether we should have some kind of video in the sanctuary, screens or whatever. And she properly asked, where does that come from? And I said, you know, my notes show that that was a part of the discussion of the Cool Ideas survey. It wasn't a part of this latest comprehensive technology survey. And I wrote it down in notes that it was a 50-50. And I don't know if that's what the Cool Ideas says, but if we don't have data to back up that it's 50-50, then we've got to remove that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I'm in agreement with you on that. Our only data from that What's Cool survey had a very sparse number of results, maybe one or two people saying, I like a screen, one person, I don't. So I don't think that is enough to say 50-50 at all, and I would take that right out. Because we don't have any facts to say that.
Any objection to removing that? I feel like I'm at the Continental Congress or whatever the assembly was for the Declaration of Independence here. But it's hearing no objection to removing that section because we don't have data to back it up. We still, the concept of screens comes through the other narratives without having to have a data point there.
The second thing Sandy brought up last night was that she and Mike have had conversations about how to reflect the data from the survey, et cetera. And none of that's in here right now. And Mike, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but there's no pride of authorship here. I would welcome modifying how we say what we have learned.
My only comment to that is Sandy and I tried to get together this past week. She's been very busy. I was traveling part of the week, so we just didn't get together. We did not have an opportunity to really put our ideas together. I know she has some ideas. I have a couple of ideas, but you know, we really haven't coordinated anything to present here this morning to say, yeah, we think the data reveals this, or we would like for us to think about it in just a little bit different manner. I know it's kind of, you know, we should have had something, but we just didn't get it done. That's all there is to it.
No problem. If the two of you between now and next week can get together, that would be great. Just know I welcome any modification, revisions of that what we've learned section, both what it says and how we say it. So go for that.
Yeah, and I would just add that, you know, if Sandy and I come up with any revelations or anything that's crazy, I'll make sure and email it out. So, you know, we kind of share our thoughts with that.
Report is going to go to the council. It might go other places too, but I think consistency in terms of what goes in what we learned from the survey. We want to make sure we have the same thing here as whatever we would publish somewhere else. Okay, so I want to make sure that whatever gets in here. So Mike and Sandy having this is what we could tell the congregation in a bulletin insert. Okay, I want to make sure it's the same as in here. Okay.
So the next thing I want to call your attention to, last Fred really encouraged that we put the recommendations under the narratives in each area. So you'll note that structurally I did that, but where that becomes important is that I then created, I want to call your attention to page 10, where I talk about a timetable. And I modified a little bit the data from Ernie's research and graphs to create priority 1 is now through 2024, for example. Priority 2 is 25, 26. It's immediate, but not immediate. It's short term. Priority 3 is long-term. Priority 4 are nice goals, but we're not even going to get there. You know, these are practices, not goals per se. So then I want you all to look at it, verify that what I've done in, for example, page 11, now through 2024, you agree that the 12 recommendations on page 11 and 12 are what we ought to be talking about now through 2024. That I think that's important. The out year time changes things, so they're not as essential, but I want to make sure everybody is fine with those in terms of where we're at. So those are keys that I share with, lift up and give to all of you for your review and your thoughts. The other thing I want you to know on training, which is, see if I can find exactly the page for training. So you go right there.
It works.
7. Training is number 5 on page 6. I had a series of emails with Lad Wiley, who was vacationing up in northern Michigan. And finally, he gave up and he called me. It's quite humorous because he said, "Why are you talking about some firm doing the training? Wouldn't we use our new AV tech person to do that?" I said, "Because apparently there's not going to be a new AV tech person." He didn't know that yet. He tried to put together a series of new recommendations on training and just frankly didn't get it done. I said, "Look, we're not going to finalize this thing today. If you can work that out," and so hopefully between now and next week, I can get that from him. Lad has said that he will be at the council meeting on the 24th, and he'll be happy to handle the training section for us, which is obviously good news. But I wanted you all to be aware of that. Then the other thing, we have 2 issues on page 8, under technology, hygiene, maintenance. Issue number 1 is that 1 or 2 people on this task force have said, "Can't we use a word other than hygiene?" So I came up, with the word maintenance. Now, I don't know if you tech experts say, no, this is a scientific word that must be used, but I give it all back to you. Can we say technology maintenance, or do we need to say technology hygiene? Or should we do like I've done with the slash, explain that hygiene really means maintenance? If you have any strong thoughts on that, we welcome them.
Ernie, you're off mute, so we assume you have a thought.
So an alternative might be best practices, because maintenance might suggest break fix as opposed to we need to do things well. It's about labeling, it's about documenting, and maybe people won't think of that as maintenance, but maybe best practices might be a more acceptable term than hygiene.
To best practices, technology best practices, we good on the change?
Great. Then Sandy also encouraged an addition on page 9 to the recommendations. That we add a recommendation that would go something like this: we must establish a protocol for equipment and security. This should include a baseline inventory and a regular process for maintaining, monitoring, conducting such an inventory of all of our equipment. And I think that makes sense, as we all know this is expensive stuff. So I thought that was a good addition, and I will add it unless there's a reason not to.
I love the addition and I have a wondering, so I need guidance. Whenever I've been involved with capital planning, another element that's always important for best practices is the anticipated life of anything. So I think another best practice is what should be part of this is so that for budget planning forward, people know that in 2 years we replace this. We don't get that specific, but in terms of capital replacement and upgrade timing, I think we should have some language in there so that's part of our best practices.
That's really, really important, and you remind me, the council authorized contracting with someone who is going to do an updated capital reserve budget for the council. As you know, we now have it as of last year in the budget process, but they're going to go through and update it to say, here's what you're missing. Doug Ingebrigtsen's been leading that effort. I said, Doug, is this a place where you want to also include a technology reserve? And if you all looked at, there's somebody at our last meeting suggested that we create either a line item or a reserve and recognize we're looking at $100,000 a year in technology between professional services and the equipment, et cetera. And before we go to council, I think it would be good for this group to sort of finalize what exactly our recommendation is in this area, because my guess is somebody in the council is going to ask, do you want a reserve budget for technology? Do you just want to encourage the council to spend 100,000 as a line item each year for technology? What are you asking? If I were a council member, I am a council member. If I were a council member, that's what I would ask you.
I agree with that, but I want to caution us that we don't know the answer.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I want us to be careful. I think we need to say to the council that there should be the annual operating budget. Then there should also be funding for the reserve. You see, if we go out of the 100, it's 40,000 here, 60 there. We don't know the right answer on
And that's
that.
going to be changing. annually.
Yeah, so I think we want both of them that will be annually reviewed.
Yes.
But I think the intel on it is what is the replacement schedule for equipment.
Great. I'm done, Jim.
Okay, Chris.
Listed on the top each line. I might suggest that the new one, like you and Sandy discussed, would immediately follow A, because the end of, so in other words, it would be the new B. Because the end of, oh, now I lost it, the end of item B, get back to that page, was it 8? Oh,
Here,
I got it.
Got
Got it, thank you. Was it 8?
Page 9.
Okay, now I got it. The end of item B says, we recommend that the professional services firm annually update the inventory of assets. So we've got to speak about inventory first, is what I'm saying. Thank you.
anything else from Steve to the team? Okay, let me open it up to the team on other things, nuances that you saw in the report that you think could be enhanced or modified.
All right, I'll go first. As we've just seen now with the first proposal that has come in for Fellowship Hall, I think we'll benefit by, being, more general and less specific about our recommendations, so that we don't end up saying, yeah, but you promised me one big pull down screen at the front of Fellowship Hall. So, perhaps we just got to couch those things as, when you're helping people envision it, envision perhaps it's one large screen. Maybe over the next 2 years, we find that it becomes 8 screens spread all around the hall. I don't know. But just so we don't get people thinking that we're locked in on, it's got to be ceiling speakers, it's got to be one screen, that kind of thing. And then the other one is wherever.
Think that we were too specific. I want to make sure that if we were too specific somewhere, we can all look at that together. Was it in, I didn't really see it 11, but was it somewhere else that we were too specific?
Yeah,
Or-
looking page 3 under the Fellowship Hall description, it does a good job of describing what we've been talking about, which now doesn't exactly match up with the first proposal that we've gotten.
So could this be an easy fix on that? In paragraph 2, imagine the state-of-the-art sound system with screen capacity. Yes,
Well,
yeah, but take out large screen, just say screen capacity. And then we could, instead of the woods, we change to the coulds.
Right. There's more perhaps, there's more could be's, so that it helps people get the idea without getting locked in on any one particular solution. And that leads to my second comment. I'd avoid any use of things like state of the art. Because I don't believe that's what we're striving for. You know, when you go to Disney World, you see some state of the art audio video technology. That's real gee whiz wow stuff. We're not striving for that. We're looking for really effective stuff, but we don't care if it's state of the art.
Ask your computer to highlight state of the art so that we can focus a lot where that is.
It's the thing.
Okay, so we're still on page 3. Okay. We've got
From the beginning of
doesn't
it.
have to start. How about effective or an effective sound system?
I think everybody should be happy with this technology, just like what.
No, then be down, do not put sound system that works. Okay. You're gonna say effective. All right, Ernie, any other comments for enhancement?
No, I think those were the general concepts of, you know, and I think Steve can come up with better words than effective in some cases and, you know, can describe things more generally in some cases. And so, no, those were my own overall comment.
All right. Mark, any input on the 13 pager?
I'm sorry, you were breaking up a little bit, Deborah. What did you say? I'm still not hearing you. I'm sorry.
Go back on mute, Marge. When they're talking, when you're not on mute, you can't hear them.
Now I may speak. Mark, do you have any comments on the 13 pages?
It's an interesting read. My first thought was, wow, it's long. But then my second thought was, it needs to be. And I really like what Steve did as far as the imagining, because it's creating that vision for people who don't know the things that we've learned along our journey of reviewing all of this equipment. And it's important for council and all of our congregation, everyone involved, that they really can imagine how we could do it. Some people can't see beyond what we're doing today, and we're trying to move beyond that and make it better, more inclusive, more accessible, and creating that vision will help us get there. I can't see a way to shorten this. I think you need to have it all here. So, because we're educating the people that we're presenting it to. And so that education is what we did over these last 6 months. And yes, it's going to be a long document and some people may skim it. But I think it's important that we leave everything here so that many of those questions that might come up later on are already in the document and we can keep referring them back to the document.
And there, I believe that if council approves this, this can be nuggetized, it can be broken out and shared in various forms to help advance the conversation.
So one of the ideas, and Mark and I had a conversation yesterday in church about what her next communication should be, and I said, well, I knew we were going to look at that proposal for Fellowship Hall, but I also sense at this meeting that we're not ready to tell the congregation that. But I do think, Marge, that we could look at that year one set of recommendations for, and that starts again on page 11. And if you could go through that and just highlight 3 to 5 of the things in there that you see as recommending for now through 2024, I think that would be a good communication, next communication to the congregation, so they begin to see the kind of things we're doing.
Now, why did you choose 3? Just
3 what?
3. Oh, just because it's just for connections and fencing.
Oh, I was just saying 3 to 5. You just pick out what you think in here would be really good for the congregation to know right now. That they get a taste of what we're doing. and what we're gonna
I'm
come
gonna
with.
do point counterpoint on it.
Sure.
I would rather because again, this is the who needs to know what when theory that I have. Council needs to be getting the information, all right, about what we recommend. But I do think that we could do some learnings, okay, because if you think about it, we did 2 surveys so far. So I think we could take, and that gets back from the Mike Sandy thing. I think we could do a few high level, this is what we heard. And I think that helps people find themselves in the what we heard department. And we can do that over the next 2 weeks in connections with telling people this is all going to the council on the 24th. But without telling people what we want to do, I think we should tell them what we learned.
I love it. I love it.
Marge is
Go ahead,
on.
Marge.
Well, it's interesting because Chris and I talked also yesterday. It's so nice being back because I can catch people at church. But I went home after we chatted in the morning and I looked over Steve's draft again and I changed my whole mind on what I thought we should do because we were going to focus on what's happening now. What are the things that were already in progress? And the more I thought about it, I thought we need to tell people what we learned from the surveys so that I'm right on the same page with you, Deborah. They don't know that yet. We've thanked them. We've badgered them about taking the survey. We thanked all of the responses that we got. But what did we learn from that? And so that's where my focus, I already started writing it last night. If I threw it out, I didn't care. And Chris, I shared it with Chris. And so I'm just going to tweak that a little bit. I thought this was data from Sandy and Mike. So I'm going to probably take the numbers out of it, but just put the generalities in and keep it at that, because there's some really good nuggets in there that support the things that we're proposing down the road.
So I think you've got a communications plan for the next 2 weeks that will work, okay? All right, so let's see, let's go to Jane. Do you have any comments on the 13 pager? You're okay? You're okay? All right, and then we lost Pastor Ken there, and then we've got a hand up over there. I'm gonna guess it's from Michael. So let's see if that is Michael's raised hand. Or
It
whoever.
is. I just kind of learned how to do it. I'm kind of impressed with myself. You know, you're talking about messaging and communication, and I think it's super important. I just want to be careful that we don't torpedo the important work of the task force in context of getting messed up with the situation we have going on in the sanctuary right now. I think if we start putting out emails with all of our hopes and dreams and this, that, and the other thing, but we still can't get a worship service to stream correctly and get through without screeching in the middle of a service, people are going to get upset. I don't know how you feel about maybe delaying a communication for a week or so. We're real hopeful that we can get this together. And I just think it will be better coming after a Sunday where everything goes smoothly and works well. But that's just my thought.
So let me make sure I understand, is that you would like you're recommending no communication this week with the hope that Sunday will be beautiful, and then we would do a connections the following week. But remember, we're not going to get into any recommendations on our communications. We're just in the, we listened, we learned. Michael,
it's just my 2 cents. Yes, that's what I'm saying, but it's up to all of you how you want to proceed. I'm just giving a warning.
I kind of agree with Michael. Sunday was like 1 step forward and 10 steps backwards for me. I thought, what the heck is going on? And other people said, you know, why is this happening? I think it's because of the storm, basically, and they haven't replaced everything, right? Or tweaked it or
Yes,
something.
you're correct.
All right, I'm gonna go up to Mark, she had her hand up. Mark.
Actually, Chris and I had that conversation yesterday morning because Chris was suggesting that we take a picture of the area where the technicians are working during services to kind of give people an idea of what's back there. I always call it the mystery booth or the Wizard of Oz in the back. And I said, probably not now. The timing's not good because we had a terrible issue with the audio right at the start of services on Sunday. I said, I think we should hold that off until a little bit later. I think Michael's correct. It's kind of in the same theme that I was thinking, except I was thinking we could still do something with the data this week. But I think you're right. It might create some expectations. That way, maybe we hold off a week. Next week, we could do, barring any other issues, next week, we could do what we learned from the survey. And then the following week, we could say, here's some general things that we're seeing happening now. And here's what we'd like to see for the future, and kind of wrap that up in the last 2 communications before we meet with council.
How does everyone like Marge's plan? Steve has a comment.
I have a comment because, and I can't tell you whether it is at the council or the growth committee or here or someplace else or just on the street, but some of us have encouraged Pastor and Michael to communicate with the congregation of everything they're trying to do to get this fixed, because the silence about nothing works on Sunday and we don't never say anything about it is an issue. And at one of these points, Michael said, I hear you. I don't want to do that until it all gets fixed. And I told him as recently as last night, not sure we can wait, because I think there is an anxiety among the membership about this issue. Michael also said at that time that such a communication could go out with the third quarter financials to everybody, and they're giving updates, etc., which I think we're very close to. So the reason I raised my hand is I know Pastor is on, I think Michael's still on. Are they planning to communicate to the congregation about everything they've tried to do over the last month to solve this issue? And it's not all solved, but it's not for lack of effort by their.
Yes,
So-
I was hoping to put a midweek connections out this week with glowing reports from this past Sunday. Unfortunately, I can't do that. But there will be a status report on the current AV situation coming out. And yes, we are at the third quarter statement time. And so Pastor Ken and I are going to work to craft a letter specifically about this problem.
All right, so what I'm hearing is the communication this week will come from the church on all the things they are working on. We will not be reporting out on our communications this week. We shall wait a week, depending on how Sunday goes. All right, is everybody comfortable with the Michael and Pastor Ken communications plan? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, let me make sure. Okay, heard from Mark, heard from Jane. Michael, anything else you have? Mike, not Michael, Mike, Armor, anything else on the 13-page narrative?
No, not really. I mean, the first time I read through this, everybody's got their part in this that they feel is near and dear to their heart. And virtual worship going forward is really important to me. And I think it's very important that we stress that, because I think in the future, we're going to end up with more virtual attendees, and it's a way to grow the church. So I was trying to think how I could, enhance that. But then on my second read through this and my step back and hearing all the comments, I'm fine with it. I really am. I think that we can't really, I think the way it's laid out in this report that gives us, here's what happens in worship, here's what happens in fellowship hall, here's what happens in over. I like the way it's laid out. I don't really have any additions or changes or emphasis to it.
Well, and we could always increase the font. Okay, I'm joking. All right, but All right, we could always increase the fund. All right, I'm gonna head over to Pastor Ken. Comments on the 13-page narrative.
I think it's great. I may have missed the conversation about how it gets separated into chunks, or is this whole thing going out in one fell swoop? I think I stepped out on that conversation, so I missed that.
What this report, once we finalize it, this is what we will be presenting to the council. After council action, we think there's things that can be pulled out and used in communications.
Lovely.
Okay.
I think it's great. I don't know where Steve finds the time to write these things, but I'm awfully glad he does.
Did I give everybody a chance to weigh in on the narrative? Okay, I'm moving on. All right, so the next thing that is on here is, we already talked about Mike and Sandy are gonna do their work on the tech survey, so we're good there. I actually think that we've talked a bit about the communications with Marge and Chris, so I think we're good there, right? I'm going to move on with something that's not on the agenda. I want to confirm that on Tuesday, October 24th, Ernie, are we on at 10 o'clock with the council on the 24th?
Yeah, we're about to have the executive committee meeting starting in a few minutes, and that's where we'll confirm it. But from my survey of people's availability, we've got very good attendance on the council for the 24th. So yes, we should continue planning on that and, count on it being confirmed.
So what I want to suggest next week's meeting, all right, finalizing our 13-pager, all right. And then I would like us to talk our ideas about how to present to council. All right, and that gives us time to actually put together the dog and pony show. All right, so I would like us, your assignment is think through how this should be presented to council and who has what roles in doing that. And we'll discuss that on the 9th. And then my thought is that on the 23rd, we'd actually do a run through. Okay. 3rd, that's the day before the 24th.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on the 9th, we'll talk about who's gonna say what our thoughts are, beat that back and forth. Is it a PowerPoint? Is it a whatever? And then we'll do a run through on the 23rd. How do we feel about that for agenda?
The only question I have is, Ernie, how much time
Yes.
do you want to allocate to this task force? Because we shouldn't overproduce the presentation, knowing the Q&A with the council becomes quite important.
Yes, you have to think about how much time from presentation and Q&A you want it, and that'll help us decide next week when we get together what we want to do.
Oh, excuse me. Of course, Steve and Pastor, I mean, we have a lot of big topics that we've got to cover. And so, we can't give an hour and a half to this topic. But I want to make sure we give it all the time that it needs. But I think we've also got to be very thoughtful about what are the asks that we're bringing to council, because at some point it's going to be time to make a motion and say, does the council approve this or that? And some of what we're going to be recommending is conceptual and long term, and we're not looking for anybody to commit to what are they going to do in 2026. But on the other hand, there are things that we are going to ask them to vote on and commit to right now. So perhaps it's, as we're shaping this, we think about, what are the things that we want to make sure to spend time on because we want to make sure they get it and are willing to vote yes on it, versus what are the more conceptual things that don't need a lot of dialogue because it's not anything they need to take action on right now anyway. So I think that if we are thinking in terms of, 20 minutes for presentation and 20 minutes for interaction and discussion is probably the most we could hope for. And if we can come in at 15 and 15, that's all the better. What do you think, Steve? You've got more experience at this than me.
So read the report before the meeting. That's just essential because you don't have time reading to them what's in the report. So you need to highlight 5 key points we want to make and then turn it over to Q&A. And there's some people in council who just by personality are going to be probers. What's that for being nice?
So, could I ask in preparation for October 9th, all right? I'm going to ask Ernie if this would be fair for you to think through what might be the 3 to 5 key themes that we would do in our 10 to 15 minute, because assuming they read everything, what would be those 5? And then wouldn't it be appropriate for us to draft a motion so that people would know what they would be approving or not? We can give them the motion. And nobody, or is that not how things work?
So I didn't put together the agenda. You have a motion
Yeah,
in the
okay.
agenda. So
Alright.
Ernie gets to create the motion.
Okay, so
when he
Ernie
creates the
gets-
agenda for the council meeting.
All right, so if Ernie does the motion, then good news, Ernie can think through what the themes would be for the motion, okay? All right, so this is all our homework thinking, okay, so write that down. Okay, Ernie, motion theme, okay. All right, so I think that's a plan. All right, I'm gonna go around and see if anybody has anything else we have not thought of yet today. So I'll start with Steve here. You're good for now?
Good.
Chris, you're okay, you got more?
Well, just a thank you to Steve again and to the whole team.
All right, I echo. I'm gonna go to Jane, and you're okay? All right, Mike, anything else for us today? You're okay? Hester, anything for else today? You're good? Marge? You good? All right, and Michael Vodnik, wherever he might be, I hope you're
Yep.
okay. All right, good. And Ernie, are you okay? Okay,
One thing, Michael.
yes,
Michael, we need you, if you can find 5 minutes between now and next week, to really review all of the training we talk about here. Because bluntly, this is not a budget item, this is a personnel thing. And you got to decide if you see anything in that area that's just too much for you and other staff to get done in the next year, we need to hear now.
Yeah. I mean, I read it several times. I think it's just going to sort of depend on what our model looks like going forward. So can I get back to you on that one?
You got a whole week.
yeah. So, participation, and I'm to end the recording, which I would send to everybody, including to Sandy and to Fred. Okay, so thank you all very much.
Good luck in your next meeting.
Yes, you got a bathroom break ahead of time. Okay.